The blood-red sunset blazed across the Montana sky as Olivia Ramirez stood at her husband's grave, the wind tugging at her black mourning dress like the persistent fingers of a ghost. It had been exactly 1 year since Thomas had been gunned down in a bank robbery gone wrong, leaving her with a small ranch, mounting debts, and a heart that had shattered into so many pieces she doubted it would ever be whole again. "I still miss you," she whispered, placing a single wildflower on the simple wooden cross. "Every single day." At 24, Olivia had already lived several lifetimes of joy and sorrow. She had come west with Thomas 5 years earlier, young and full of dreams, leaving behind her parents' comfortable home in Boston for the promise of adventure and a life built with their own hands. Now, in 1879, she faced the brutal reality of frontier life alone. The townsfolk in Silver Creek had been kind enough at first, bringing food and offering condolences. But as the months passed, their patience with the young widow had begun to wear thin. "You need to sell that ranch," Mrs. Whittaker had told her just yesterday at the general store, her voice dripping with what she likely thought was compassion. "A woman alone can't manage such a place. Perhaps consider Mr. Jenkins' offer. He's a widower himself, and while not young, he's established." The thought of marrying the 50-year-old banker made Olivia's stomach turn. She'd rather lose everything than enter a marriage of convenience. "I made you a promise," she said to Thomas's grave, straightening her shoulders. "I'll keep our home somehow." As she turned to leave, she noticed a rider approaching from the west. The setting sun silhouetted his figure, casting him as a dark shadow against the crimson sky. Instinctively, Olivia reached for the small derringer she kept in her pocket. A woman alone couldn't be too careful. The rider slowed as he approached, and Olivia could make out more details now. He sat tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders covered by a worn duster. A cowboy hat shaded his face. The horse beneath him was a magnificent palomino that moved with easy grace. "Evening, madam," he called, stopping a respectful distance away. "Don't mean to disturb you. The cemetery is public land," Olivia replied, her hand still on her hidden gun, "though most folks don't come calling at sunset." He dismounted with fluid ease, removing his hat to reveal a face weathered by sun and wind, yet surprisingly young, perhaps 30 or so. His eyes, a striking blue that reminded her of summer skies, held her gaze steadily. "Name's Nathan Vance, madam. Just rode in from Wyoming Territory." "Looking for work?" "There's nothing for you here," Olivia said, moving toward her wagon. "Town's that way, Mr. Vance. The Golden Spur Saloon usually knows who's hiring." Nathan glanced at the grave she'd been standing before, then back at her face. "You're the Ramirez widow." Olivia stiffened. "How would you know that?" "Stopped at the general store before coming out this way. Mrs. Whittaker is informative." A humorless laugh escaped Olivia. "I'm sure she was. She mentioned you might be looking to sell your place." "Mrs. Whittaker is mistaken," Olivia said sharply. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get home before dark." Nathan replaced his hat but made no move toward his horse. "Actually, Mrs. Ramirez, I heard you might need help with your ranch." Olivia paused with one foot on the wagon step. "And who told you that?" "Fellow in town named Santiago. Says he helps you sometimes with the heavy work, but he's getting on in years." Santiago Rodriguez had been Thomas's friend, one of the few people who hadn't pressured her to sell. He still came by twice a week to help with repairs and the more demanding chores. "Santiago has a loose tongue," she said, climbing into the wagon seat. "He also said you're about to lose 20 head of cattle to the bank if you don't make your payment by the end of the month." Olivia's hands tightened on the reins. "My financial situation is none of your concern, Mr. Vance." Maybe not. He stepped closer, his expression earnest. But I'm offering honest work for honest pay. I'm good with cattle, horses too, can fix most anything that breaks. I don't need much, just meals and a place to sleep in your barn. Why would you work for so little? Winter's coming. Rather have a roof and regular meals than take my chances on the trail. His eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. And I've got a special way with stubborn livestock. Despite her wariness, Olivia found herself considering his offer. The truth was, she desperately needed help. Santiago couldn't manage everything, and hiring regular hands was beyond her means now. If this stranger was willing to work for room and board until she could pay him properly. I can't promise when I'd have money to pay you, she said cautiously. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Nathan replied. For now, let's say a month's trial. If you're not satisfied with my work, I'll move on, no hard feelings. Olivia studied him, weighing her limited options. There was something in his direct gaze that inspired trust, despite her better judgment. 1 month, she finally agreed. And you sleep in the barn, not the house. A small smile curved his mouth. Yes, madam. And I should warn you, Mr. Vance, I keep a rifle by my bed and know how to use it. His smile widened. I'd expect nothing less, Mrs. Ramirez. Nathan mounted his horse and followed as Olivia set her wagon in motion. The sun had disappeared now, leaving behind a purple twilight that deepened with each passing minute. They traveled in silence for a while, the creak of wagon wheels and the soft thud of hoofbeats the only sounds. How long have you been on your own? Nathan asked eventually. A year, Olivia replied, keeping her eyes on the road ahead. My husband was killed in a robbery. I'm sorry for your loss. The simple sincerity in his voice made her throat tighten unexpectedly. Thank you. No children, the question pierced her like a physical pain. No, she said shortly. No children. Nathan seemed to sense he'd touched a raw nerve. He fell silent again until they crested a small rise, and the ranch came into view below them. The Ramirez Ranch wasn't large by Montana standards, just 160 acres with a modest house, barn, and corral, but it represented everything Olivia and Thomas had worked for. In the moonlight, it looked peaceful, the whitewashed house glowing faintly against the darkness. Home, sweet home, Olivia murmured, mostly to herself. It's a fine place, Nathan said, genuine appreciation in his voice. Good water source, sheltered position. Your husband chose well. We chose it together, she corrected him. I wasn't just along for the ride, Mr. Vance. He tipped his hat slightly. My apologies, Mrs. Ramirez. Won't make that mistake again. As they approached the house, a dog's bark shattered the quiet. A large black and white border collie bounded from the porch, circling the wagon with excited yips. That's Patch, Olivia said, her voice softening. He's friendly, just protective. Nathan extended a hand from his saddle, allowing the dog to sniff him. Good boy, Patch. Just doing your job, aren't you? The dog's tail wagged cautiously. They pulled up to the house, and Olivia set the brake on her wagon. I'll show you to the barn. There's a small room at the back where the previous owner kept tack. It has a cot. That'll be fine, Nathan said, dismounting and beginning to unsaddle his horse. We start at sunrise, Olivia added. Breakfast is at 6. I'll be ready. As Olivia led the way to the barn, lantern in hand, she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake allowing this stranger onto her property. Yet something told her Nathan Vance wasn't a threat, at least not in the conventional sense. Little did she know how his arrival would change everything. True to his word, Nathan was already in the yard when Olivia emerged from the house at dawn the next morning. He'd managed to find the chicken feed and was scattering it for the small flock of Rhode Island Reds that provided eggs for the ranch. Good morning, he called, seeing her on the porch. Hope you don't mind me getting started. Olivia had slept poorly, worrying about the wisdom of hiring a man she knew nothing about. Yet here he was, performing chores without being asked, his manner as straightforward in the morning light as it had been the previous evening. "Not at all," she replied, approaching the chicken coop. "Though I usually collect the eggs first, then feed them." "Ah, my mistake." He handed her the feed sack. "City boy originally, still learning the finer points of farming. You said you worked with cattle." "As a hired hand, yes. Drove herds up from Texas to the railheads in Kansas." "Learned ranching on the job, you might say." Olivia nodded, entering the coop to gather eggs. When she emerged with a half-dozen in her apron, Nathan was studying the corral fence with a critical eye. "That section needs replacing," he observed. "Too much rot in the bottom rail." "I know," Olivia sighed. "It's on my list, but lumber costs money." "There's a stand of pine about a mile east, near the creek. With your permission, I could fell a few trees, mill the lumber ourselves." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "You know how to mill lumber too?" A slight smile crossed his face. "Told you I can fix most anything. Before I was a cowboy, I was a carpenter's apprentice back in Pennsylvania. A man of many talents. Jack of all trades, master of none," he countered, his smile widening to reveal a dimple in his left cheek. "But I get by." Over breakfast, eggs, bacon, and biscuits that Olivia had risen early to prepare, Nathan outlined what he saw as the most pressing needs for the ranch. "That south pasture fence needs mending before any more cattle wander off. The barn roof has at least 3 leaks I spotted last night. And your wagon's left rear wheel is wobbling. The hub needs repacking with grease." Olivia poured him more coffee, impressed despite herself. "You noticed all that in less than a day." "It's my job to notice," he said simply. "What else needs doing that I haven't seen yet?" She hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "Everything you mentioned, plus the smokehouse door is broken, the chicken coop needs reinforcing against predators, and the well pump handle sticks in cold weather." "Which will be here before we know it," Nathan nodded. "What about your cattle? How many head do you have, and where are they grazing now?" 47 head, including calves. "They're in the north pasture, about 2 miles from here. Santiago and I moved them there last week for the better grass. They'll need to be brought closer before the first snow. That north pasture gets dangerous drifts if I'm reading the land right." Olivia stared at him. "How would you know that? Seen it before in similar terrain." He shrugged. "Mountains to the north create a wind tunnel effect. Snow piles up fast." Thomas had made the same observation their first winter on the ranch. Olivia had forgotten that detail among the 1,000 others she'd had to manage alone. "We lost 6 cattle there our first winter," she admitted. Thomas said the same thing about the drifts. Something flickered in Nathan's eyes, sympathy, perhaps. "Your husband sounds like he knew his business." "He did." Olivia stood, collecting the plates to avoid showing how much it still hurt to speak of Thomas. "Well, Mr. Vance, seems like you have your work cut out for you." "Nathan," he said. "If we're going to be working together, Mrs. Ramirez, you might as well use my given name." She hesitated, then nodded. "And I'm Olivia." "Olivia," he repeated, the name sounding different somehow in his deep voice. "Beautiful name. Spanish. My mother was from Mexico," she explained. "My father was a doctor from Boston who went there to help after a cholera outbreak. They fell in love, and he brought her back to Massachusetts." "And how did you end up in Montana territory?" Olivia turned away, putting dishes in the wash basin. "That's a story for another time. We have work to do." Nathan didn't press the issue. He simply drained his coffee cup and stood. "Yes, madam. I'll start with that wagon wheel if you've got grease. In the barn, top shelf near the door." He nodded and headed out, whistling softly. Patch, who had been lying under the table, trotted after him as if they'd been friends for years. "Traitor," Olivia murmured to the dog, but there was no heat in it. Watching through the window as Nathan examined the wagon wheel, his movements efficient and confident, she felt an unexpected twinge of something she quickly suppressed. Admiration, she told herself firmly. Nothing more. The days fell into a rhythm. Nathan rose before dawn, started the morning chores, and joined Olivia for breakfast. They would discuss the day's work, then separate to tackle different tasks. Nathan prioritized the repairs that would be most critical for winter survival, working with tireless energy from sunrise to sunset. Santiago Rodriguez, who still came by twice a week, was initially suspicious of the newcomer. "How do you know he is not just waiting to rob you?" the old Mexican had asked in Spanish when Nathan was out of earshot. "He could have robbed me that first night if that was his intention," Olivia replied in the same language. "Besides, there's not much left to steal." Santiago had snorted. "There is you, Nina. A young woman alone is always in danger." But even Santiago had to admit, after working alongside Nathan for a day repairing the barn roof, that the man knew his business. "He has good hands," the old man grudgingly told Olivia. "And he respects the tools. This is the mark of a good man." By the end of the second week, the transformation of the ranch was remarkable. The fences were mended, the barn watertight, and the wagon repaired. Nathan had fashioned a new door for the smokehouse from hand-milled lumber, reinforced the chicken coop, and fixed the well pump. He'd even found time to chop and stack enough firewood to last half the winter. Olivia watched him split logs one afternoon, the powerful swing of the axe mesmerizing. His shirt clung to his broad back, darkened with sweat despite the October chill. As if sensing her gaze, he paused and looked up, catching her watching from the porch. Instead of looking away, embarrassed at being caught, Olivia walked toward him. "You've accomplished more in 2 weeks than I managed in 6 months, she said. Nathan leaned on the axe handle. "You've been trying to do the work of 3 men, Olivia. It's not surprising you couldn't keep up. Still, I'm grateful." She hesitated, then added, "I was thinking we should ride out to check on the cattle tomorrow. I haven't seen them in almost a week." "Good idea. Weather's holding, but it won't for much longer." He glanced at the mountains to the north, where dark clouds were gathering. "First snow will be here within the week, I'd wager. Then we should move them to the south pasture soon. Day after tomorrow, if the weather permits." Nathan split one more log with a powerful stroke, then began gathering the pieces. Santiago said he'd come help. Olivia nodded, then blurted out the question that had been on her mind. "Why are you doing all this? Working so hard for just room and board?" Nathan straightened, his blue eyes meeting hers directly. "Because you need the help, and I need the work. There are better paying jobs in town, or other ranches that could afford a proper wage." He was silent for a moment, then said, "Maybe I like the challenge. Or maybe I respect a woman who refuses to give up when everyone tells her she should." The intensity in his gaze made Olivia look away. "People talk too much. That they do." Nathan loaded wood into the wheelbarrow. "But sometimes they're worth listening to, and sometimes they're not. Trick is knowing the difference." The next morning they rode out together to check on the cattle. Olivia on her bay mare, Daisy, and Nathan on his Palomino stallion, which he called Sundance. It was a perfect fall day, the kind that seems to hold summer's warmth while hinting at winter's approach. The aspens were turning gold, splashing the landscape with vibrant color against the dark green of the pines. "It's beautiful country," Nathan commented as they rode side by side across a meadow. "I can see why you and your husband chose it." Olivia nodded, breathing in the crisp air. "Thomas fell in love with it immediately. We looked at 3 other properties, but he knew this was the one the moment we crested that rise and saw the valley below. "How did you meet him?" Nathan asked, his tone casual. The question caught Olivia off guard. Few people asked her about Thomas anymore, as if speaking of him might cause her to shatter. "He worked for my father in Boston," she said after a moment, "as a clerk in his medical office. He was studying to be a doctor himself, but he had the wanderlust." She smiled at the memory. "He used to read me stories from the newspapers about the West settlers striking it rich, building new towns, taming the frontier. I think I fell in love with his dreams before I fell in love with him." "And your parents, how did they feel about you heading west?" "They were horrified," Olivia admitted. "My father refused to speak to me for months after we announced our plans. My mother cried every day until we left." She sighed. "They were certain I'd die of cholera or be killed by Indians or freeze to death my first winter. But you didn't." "No," she agreed softly, "though I'm not sure they'd approve of my current circumstances either." Nathan studied her profile. "Do you ever regret it, coming west?" Olivia considered the question seriously. "No," she said finally. "Even with everything that's happened, I don't regret it. I've lived more in 5 years here than I would have in 50 in Boston." They rode in companionable silence for a while, until they spotted the cattle grazing peacefully in the distance. As they approached, Nathan whistled softly. "Fine-looking herd," he said approvingly. "Good breeding stock." "Thomas was particular about which bulls he purchased," Olivia said with pride. "He believed in quality over quantity." They spent an hour checking the animals, Nathan dismounting occasionally to examine a cow more closely or test the water in the stream that ran through the pasture. His knowledge impressed Olivia. He clearly knew cattle well. On their ride back, Nathan pointed out a lone steer that had separated from the herd and wandered into a stand of trees. "Want me to bring him back?" he offered. "Please," Olivia nodded. "I'll wait here." She watched as Nathan guided Sundance toward the wayward animal with practiced ease. The steer, a young one with just the beginning of horns, looked up nervously as they approached. Instead of charging directly at it, Nathan circled wide, then gradually moved closer, talking soothingly the whole time. To Olivia's surprise, the steer, instead of bolting further into the trees, allowed Nathan to guide it back toward the herd. There was something almost magical about the way he worked with animals, a gentle confidence that seemed to communicate itself to them. When he rejoined her, Olivia couldn't help but express her admiration. "That was impressive. That particular steer has always been flighty." Nathan shrugged, but she could tell he was pleased by the compliment. "Like I said, I have a way with stubborn livestock." As they continued toward home, the sky began to darken to the north. "Storm's coming faster than I thought," Nathan frowned. "We should pick up the pace." They urged their horses into a trot, but they were still a mile from the ranch when the first fat snowflakes began to fall. Within minutes, the air was thick with swirling white, and the temperature dropped dramatically. "Early blizzard," Nathan called over the rising wind. "We need to find shelter. The ranch is too far in this." Olivia pointed toward a line of trees. "There's a trapper's cabin just beyond that copse. Thomas and I used it once when we got caught in a spring storm." They changed direction, the horses struggling now against the wind and thickening snow. By the time they reached the small log cabin, visibility had dropped to mere feet and both riders were covered in a layer of snow. Nathan dismounted quickly, helping Olivia down. "Get inside. I'll take care of the horses." The cabin was primitive, but solid, a single room with a stone fireplace, rough-hewn table and chairs, and a narrow bed frame with a straw-filled mattress. Olivia brushed snow from her clothing and quickly got to work. There was kindling and firewood stacked beside the hearth, and she soon had a small blaze going. Nathan entered a few minutes later, stamping snow from his boots. "Horses are in the lean-to out back. They'll be cold but dry." "This storm came out of nowhere," Olivia said, warming her hands by the fire. "Mountain weather," Nathan nodded. "Unpredictable, especially this time of year." He removed his snow-crusted coat and hat, hanging them near the fire to dry. "Looks like we might be here a while." Olivia tried to ignore the flutter of nervousness in her stomach. She'd never been alone with a man other than her husband in such close quarters. "There should be some basic supplies," she said, moving to check a crude cupboard built into one wall. To her relief, she found a tin of coffee, some jerky, beans, and hardtack emergency rations left by whoever used the cabin last. "At least we won't starve. And we won't freeze, which is the more immediate concern," Nathan said, adding another log to the fire. "This place is well built. Should hold the heat nicely." As the afternoon wore on, the storm intensified. Wind howled around the cabin, finding every crack and crevice to send cold drafts skittering across the floor. The small window became completely obscured by drifting snow. Nathan took stock of their supplies and situation with calm efficiency. He melted snow for drinking water, prepared a simple meal of jerky and hardtack softened in hot water, and reinforced the lean to where the horses were sheltered. As darkness fell, the reality of their situation became clear. They would be spending the night. "I'll sleep on the floor," Nathan said firmly when Olivia offered to take that position herself. "I've slept on worse, believe me." "At least take the blanket," she insisted, pulling the single woolen coverlet from the bed. "I have my coat." "We'll share it," he countered. "You take the bed with the blanket, I'll sleep on the floor beside the fire with my coat. That way we both stay warm enough." The practicality of his suggestion couldn't be argued with, though Olivia felt oddly shy as she removed her boots and outer clothing, keeping on her dress as she slipped under the blanket. Nathan added more wood to the fire, then settled on the floor, his tall frame barely fitting in the space between the hearth and the bed. "Try to get some sleep," he said, his voice low in the firelit darkness. "Storm should blow itself out by morning." Olivia lay stiffly, listening to the wind and Nathan's steady breathing. Despite the strange circumstances, she felt oddly safe in his presence. It had been a long time since she'd felt protected rather than vulnerable. "Nathan," she whispered after a while, unsure if he was still awake. "Hum," came his drowsy response. "Thank you for everything you've done at the ranch." There was a pause then. "You're welcome, Olivia. Now get some sleep." She closed her eyes and for the first time in many months fell asleep without the weight of worry pressing down on her. The storm passed during the night, leaving behind a transformed landscape. When Olivia and Nathan emerged from the cabin the next morning, they found themselves in a world of pristine white. Nearly a foot of snow blanketed the ground, with deeper drifts where the wind had piled it against trees and the sides of the cabin. "Beautiful," Olivia breathed, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. "Beautiful but dangerous," Nathan cautioned. "This much snow this early in the season isn't a good sign." He looked toward the north pasture, now invisible beyond the rolling white hills. "We need to move those cattle today." They set out for the ranch as soon as the horses were saddled. The going was slow through the deep snow, but the sky above was a brilliant blue, and the sun's reflection off the snow was almost blinding. By mid-morning, they reached the ranch to find Santiago already there, looking worried. "Gracias a Dios," the old man exclaimed when he saw them riding in. "I feared you were caught in the storm." "We took shelter in the old trapper's cabin," Olivia explained as she dismounted, "but we're fine." Santiago's dark eyes moved from her face to Nathan's, a question in them that made Olivia flush. "We need to move the herd today," Nathan said, either missing or ignoring the old man's scrutiny. "More snow like this and they'll be trapped up there." Santiago nodded gravely. I had the same thought. That is why I came early today." They worked quickly to prepare, gathering ropes and checking their saddles. Olivia changed into dry clothes and packed food for what would likely be a long day. By noon, the three of them were riding north, with Patch bounding through the snow alongside them. The cattle were huddled together when they arrived, looking miserable in the deep snow. Moving them proved to be even more challenging than anticipated. The snow concealed obstacles and made the footing treacherous for both horses and cattle. Several times, animals became stuck in drifts and had to be physically pulled free. Nathan took charge naturally, directing Santiago to one flank of the herd while he took the other. Olivia worked behind them, keeping stragglers moving. It was exhausting, demanding work, but there was a rhythm to it, a dance between riders and livestock that Olivia found herself enjoying despite the difficulty. The short winter day was waning by the time they finally got the herd settled in the south pasture, where the snow was shallower and there was better protection from the wind. All three riders were exhausted, their clothes damp with sweat and melted snow. "You handle yourself well on a cattle drive," Nathan told Olivia as they rode the last stretch toward home in the gathering twilight. "Not many women could do what you did today." "My father wanted sons," Olivia replied with a small smile. "He got me instead, so he taught me to ride and shoot and never to back down from a challenge." "He taught you well," Nathan said, his admiration evident. That night, after Santiago had gone home and the chores were done, Nathan and Olivia sat at the kitchen table with mugs of coffee laced with whiskey to ward off the chill. Both were tired but satisfied with the day's accomplishment. "The cattle should be safe there until spring," Nathan said, stretching his long legs toward the stove. "Unless we get a truly biblical amount of snow." "Let's hope not," Olivia sighed, feeling every ache in her body. "I'm not sure I could manage another drive like today's." "You'd manage," Nathan said confidently. "You're tougher than you give yourself credit for." Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them, a current of understanding and mutual respect that made Olivia's heart beat a little faster. She looked away first, rising to put her empty mug in the wash basin. "I should get some sleep," she said. "Morning comes early." Nathan nodded, finishing his own drink. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night," she replied, pausing at the door to her bedroom. "And Nathan, thank you again. For today." He simply nodded, his blue eyes warm in the lamplight. As Olivia closed her bedroom door behind her, she leaned against it, suddenly confused by the feeling stirring within her. She had not expected to feel anything for a man again, had told herself she couldn't. Thomas had been her great love, her only love. There could never be another. Yet something about Nathan Vance had begun to penetrate the shell she'd built around her heart. His quiet strength, his unwavering support, the way he treated her as an equal rather than a helpless widow, all of it was making her question her conviction that she would live out her days alone. "Stop it," she whispered to herself. "He's just passing through. Once winter's over, he'll move on." But as she prepared for bed, Olivia couldn't help wondering what it would be like if he stayed. The weeks following the early snowstorm settled into a comfortable routine. The weather improved temporarily, what old-timers called Indian summer, giving them precious time to complete the final preparations for winter. Nathan dug a deeper path to the well, reinforced the barn doors against high winds, and helped Olivia preserve the last of the garden's produce. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes in companionable silence. Nathan proved to be well-read for a cowboy, able to discuss everything from Shakespeare to the latest scientific discoveries. When Olivia expressed surprise at his knowledge, he shrugged. Had a schoolteacher mother who believed ignorance was a sin worse than any in the Bible, he explained. She made sure all her children could quote Emerson and calculate compound interest, even if we were living in a two-room cabin on the Pennsylvania frontier. She sounds remarkable, Olivia said, genuinely impressed. She was, Nathan agreed, a shadow crossing his face. Died of influenza when I was 16. Father followed her a year later, some said of a broken heart, though the doctor called it pneumonia. I'm sorry, Olivia said softly. You must miss them. Every day, he nodded. But they left me well equipped to make my way in the world, and for that I'm grateful. And your siblings? 2 sisters, both married now. One in Ohio, one in California. We write when we can, but it's been years since I've seen either of them. His willingness to share his past made Olivia more comfortable sharing her own. One evening, as rain pattered against the windows, a welcome change from snow, she found herself telling him about how she and Thomas had come to Montana. He had consumption, she admitted, staring into the fire. The doctors in Boston gave him 2 years at most. One suggested the dry air of the West might help. She smiled sadly. Thomas took that slim hope and turned it into a grand adventure, convinced me we were going to build an empire together. And you believed him, Nathan said. It wasn't a question. With all my heart, Olivia nodded. We sank every penny we had into this place, worked ourselves to exhaustion making it viable, her voice caught. And it was working. Thomas got stronger out here. The cough became less frequent. We started talking about children, about the future. She fell silent, lost in memories. Then the robbery happened, Nathan prompted gently. Olivia nodded, blinking back tears. He wasn't even supposed to be in town that day. I was the one who needed to go to the general store, but I was behind on the laundry. He offered to go instead. She took a shaky breath. 3 men rode into Silver Creek, decided to rob the bank. Thomas was just leaving the store when the shooting started. A stray bullet caught him in the chest. It wasn't your fault, Nathan said quietly. I know that. In my head, I know it. Olivia wiped away a tear that had escaped despite her efforts. But sometimes my heart says otherwise. Nathan reached across the space between their chairs, his large hand covering hers. The heart isn't always rational, he said, his voice gentle. But it usually finds its way to the truth eventually. His touch was warm and reassuring, and Olivia didn't pull away as she might have just weeks ago. Instead, she turned her hand over to clasp his briefly. Thank you for listening, she said. Not many people want to hear about Thomas anymore. They think it's time I moved on, whatever that means. Nathan withdrew his hand slowly. People are uncomfortable with grief. They want it tidy and finished with clear boundaries. But it doesn't work that way. No, Olivia agreed. It doesn't. The conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. A certain wall had come down between them, allowing for a deeper connection. Olivia found herself looking forward to their evening talks, to hearing Nathan's deep laugh when she said something amusing, to the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. But with this growing closeness came an increasing awareness of him as a man, the breadth of his shoulders, the grace of his movements, the timbre of his voice. It both thrilled and frightened her, this reawakening of feelings she had thought long dead. November brought more snow and bitter cold. The world contracted to the ranch buildings and the immediate surroundings. Santiago could only make it out once a week now, and sometimes not even then. Olivia and Nathan developed a rhythm to their days, caring for the animals, maintaining the buildings, preparing and preserving food. They worked well together, anticipating each other's needs and movements like dance partners who had practiced for years. One particularly cold evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Nathan broached a subject they had both been avoiding. "The month's trial period ended 3 weeks ago," he said casually, whittling a piece of pine wood into what looked like a small animal. "Thought you might want to discuss whether I should stay on." Olivia's hand stilled in her mending. "Do you want to leave?" Nathan looked up, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight. "No," he said simply. "I don't." The directness of his answer made her heart skip. "Then stay," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "At least until spring." "I can't pay you much, but I'm not concerned about money," he interrupted. "I've saved enough over the years to get by, and as you've noticed, my needs are simple. Still, it's not right for you to work for nothing." Nathan set aside his whittling and leaned forward. "Olivia, I want to be clear about something. I'm not staying just because you need help with the ranch, though that's part of it. I'm staying because I've come to care about this place." He paused, then added more softly, "And about you." Olivia's breath caught. "Nathan, you don't need to say anything," he continued quickly. "I know you're still grieving Thomas. I know your heart isn't ready for anything else. I respect that. I just wanted to be honest about where I stand." The silence that followed was charged with unspoken emotions. Olivia's mind raced. Part of her wanted to retreat, to rebuild the walls around her heart. Another part, a part that grew stronger with each passing day, wanted to acknowledge the feelings developing between them. "I don't know what I'm ready for," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never expected to feel anything for anyone again, but you do." There was a careful hope in his question. Olivia met his gaze. "Yes," she admitted, "I do." The smile that spread across Nathan's face was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Then that's enough for now," he said. "The rest can wait." December arrived with a ferocity that even the oldest settlers in the area said was unusual. The snow piled higher, and temperatures dropped so low that the creek froze solid. Trips into town became all but impossible, making Olivia grateful for their thorough preparations and for Nathan's presence. They celebrated Christmas quietly, exchanging simple gifts. Olivia had knitted Nathan a new scarf, using wool she'd been saving for a special project. He presented her with the whittling he'd been working on for weeks, a perfectly detailed miniature of Daisy, her mare captured mid-gallop. "It's beautiful," Olivia said, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "I didn't know you were an artist." "Hardly that," Nathan chuckled. "Just something to keep my hands busy on long winter nights." Olivia impulsively leaned forward and kissed his cheek. "Thank you. It's perfect." The brief contact sent a jolt through her that was both frightening and exhilarating. Nathan's eyes darkened, but he made no move to prolong the moment, seemingly content to follow her lead. As January's bitter cold gave way to February's slightly longer days, Olivia found herself increasingly drawn to Nathan. Their conversations deepened, touching on hopes and dreams they had barely acknowledged to themselves, let alone others. They discovered a shared love of music. Nathan could play the harmonica, while Olivia had a sweet singing voice. Their impromptu concerts became a highlight of the long winter evenings, yet neither of them pushed for more than this growing emotional intimacy. Nathan seemed to understand instinctively that Olivia needed time, needed to move at her own pace. And she was grateful for his patience, even as she sometimes wondered what it would be like to be held in his arms. The first real thaw came in late February, a few days of sunshine and temperatures warm enough to melt some of the snow, making the ranch look like a half-drowned version of itself. They took advantage of the improved weather to check on the cattle, finding the herd thin but healthy in the south pasture. On their ride back, they stopped on a ridge overlooking the ranch. The afternoon sun glinted off the wet snow, creating a dazzling display. "Spring will be here before we know it," Nathan observed, his breath no longer forming clouds in the air. "Yes," Olivia agreed, a strange anxiety suddenly gripping her. Spring meant roads clearing. It meant Nathan could leave, move on to other work, other places. "What will you do?" "When the weather breaks completely," Nathan turned in his saddle to look at her directly. "That depends." "On what?" "On you, Olivia." Her heart hammered in her chest. "Me. I told you months ago that I care for you," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "That hasn't changed. If anything, it's grown stronger. But I won't stay where I'm not wanted, no matter how much I might wish otherwise." Olivia swallowed hard, her throat suddenly tight. "The townsfolk already talk," she said, deflecting the real issue. "Mrs. Whittaker all but accused me of impropriety last time I was in the store." "Mrs. Whittaker would find fault with an angel," Nathan replied with a slight smile. "But if you're concerned about appearances, there's a simple solution." "Which is, marry me." The directness of his proposal took her breath away. "Nathan, you don't have to answer now," he said quickly. "And if the answer is no, I'll understand. I'll help you find a good hand to replace me, someone reliable, and I'll move on." His blue eyes held hers steadily. "But if there's any chance at all that you might eventually feel for me what I feel for you, I'd like to stay and find out." Olivia stared at him, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. Fear, hope, guilt, longing all warred within her. "I need time," she finally said. "You have it," Nathan assured her. "All you need." The rest of the ride home was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. But something had shifted between them, a question had been asked that could not be unasked, and sooner or later, Olivia would have to provide an answer. That night, sleep eluded her. She tossed and turned, Nathan's proposal replaying in her mind. Marry him. The very idea both terrified and tantalized her. She had never imagined marrying again after Thomas, had believed herself incapable of loving again. Yet here she was, lying awake thinking of another man, wondering what a future with him might look like. "Thomas," she whispered into the darkness, "what should I do?" But Thomas, of course, could not answer, and perhaps that was the point. Thomas was gone, and she was still here, still alive, still capable of feeling. Was it a betrayal to open her heart again? Or was it a testament to what Thomas had taught her about love, that it was meant to be embraced, not feared? As dawn broke, Olivia rose, weary but resolute. She dressed warmly and slipped out of the house, heading toward the small family cemetery on a rise behind the barn. Thomas's grave was partially covered in snow, but she brushed it away, revealing the simple wooden cross. "I miss you," she said, as she always did. "I think I always will." The morning was still, the only sound the distant call of a crow. "Nathan asked me to marry him," she continued, her voice stronger now. "He's a good man, Thomas, the kind of man you would respect. He's helped me keep our home, our dream alive." She touched the cross gently. "And I think I'm falling in love with him." Saying the words aloud made them real in a way they hadn't been before. Tears sprang to her eyes, but they weren't entirely tears of sadness. "I'll always love you," she promised. "That won't change. But my heart seems to have room for more love than I thought possible." She wiped her eyes with her gloved hand. "I hope you would understand. I hope you would want me to be happy." As she stood there, the rising sun broke over the eastern hills, bathing the snow-covered landscape in golden light. A warm breeze, unusual for this time of year, caressed her face like a gentle touch. Olivia smiled through her tears. It wasn't a sign, not really, just a coincidence of nature. But it felt like permission nonetheless. When she returned to the house, Nathan was in the kitchen, brewing coffee. He looked up as she entered, concern crossing his face when he saw the evidence of tears. "Are you all right?" he asked, setting down the coffee pot. Olivia nodded, removing her coat and gloves. "I went to visit Thomas's grave." Nathan's expression sobered. "I see. I needed to talk to him," she explained. "About your proposal." A flicker of hope appeared in Nathan's eyes, quickly tempered with caution. "And did you find the answers you were looking for?" Olivia moved closer until she stood directly before him. "I think I did," she said softly. "People in town say I couldn't love again after Thomas, that no one could replace him in my heart." Nathan nodded, his face carefully neutral. "And what do you say?" "I say they're right about one thing: no one will replace Thomas. He was my first love, the man who brought me west, who showed me a life I never knew was possible." She reached up to touch Nathan's face, her fingers gentle against his weathered cheek. "But they're wrong to think I couldn't love again, because I do love again. I love you, Nathan Vance." The joy that bloomed on his face was like nothing Olivia had ever seen, pure and unrestrained, lighting his blue eyes from within. "Olivia," he breathed, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "Are you certain?" "I am," she nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "It's not the same as what I felt for Thomas. It's different, but no less real, no less precious." Nathan's hands moved to cradle her face. "I love you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I think I have since that first evening when you stood your ground at the cemetery, ready to defend yourself against a stranger." Olivia smiled, remembering. "You didn't seem very threatening, even then." "I tried my best to appear harmless," he chuckled. "Though it was hard not to stare at the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen." "Flatterer," she murmured, but her cheeks warmed at the compliment. "Just truthful," Nathan countered, his eyes never leaving hers. "Olivia Ramirez, will you marry me? Be my wife, my partner in all things." "Yes," she said simply. "I will." His arms went around her then, drawing her close as his lips found hers in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened into something more passionate. Olivia responded with a fervor that surprised her, her body remembering sensations she had thought forgotten. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Well," Nathan said, a slightly dazed smile on his face, "that was worth waiting for." Olivia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I should hope so." They stood in the kitchen, holding each other as the morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. For the first time since Thomas's death, Olivia felt completely, unequivocally alive. "What happens now?" she asked, resting her head against Nathan's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Now," he said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, "we plan a wedding, unless you want a long engagement." Olivia thought about it, then shook her head. "No, we've wasted enough time already. As soon as the road's clear enough for travel, we'll go into town, speak to the preacher. And if people talk," she looked up at him, a new confidence in her gaze, "let them. I'm done living my life according to what others think I should do." Nathan's smile was approving. "That's my girl." The roads cleared enough for travel by mid-March. Olivia and Nathan made the journey into Silver Creek, the wagon wheels splashing through mud and melting snow. They made quite a stir in the small town, the widow Ramirez and her ranch hand, openly holding hands as they walked to the church. Reverend Phillips was surprised by their announcement but recovered quickly. "Well, this is unexpected," he said, adjusting his spectacles. "But God works in mysterious ways. When would you like the ceremony to take place?" "As soon as possible," Nathan answered, squeezing Olivia's hand. "Next Sunday, after services," the Reverend suggested. "That would give time for the banns to be read." They agreed, and as they left the church, they ran directly into Mrs. Whittaker, whose eyes widened at the sight of their clasped hands. "Mrs. Ramirez," she said, her voice heavy with disapproval. "Mr. Vance." "Good morning, Mrs. Whittaker," Olivia replied pleasantly. "Lovely day, isn't it? The spring thaw always lifts my spirits." "Indeed," the older woman said stiffly. "I hear congratulations are in order." "Thank you," Nathan said before Olivia could respond. "We're very happy." Mrs. Whittaker's lips thinned. "So soon after poor Thomas, people will talk." "People already talk," Olivia pointed out calmly. "They've been talking since the day Nathan arrived at my ranch. At least now they'll have something true to discuss." The older woman huffed, clearly taken aback by Olivia's directness. "Well, if you'll excuse us," Nathan interrupted smoothly. "We have errands to run before heading back to the ranch." As they walked away, Olivia couldn't help the small laugh that escaped her. "Did you see her face?" "I did," Nathan grinned. "You handled her perfectly." "It felt good," Olivia admitted. "Standing up for our happiness instead of apologizing for it." They completed their errands, purchasing supplies for the ranch and a few special items for the wedding. At the general store, Santiago's daughter Elena worked as a clerk. When she heard their news, she clapped her hands in delight. "Papa said this would happen. He has been saying it since Christmas. Oh, I am so happy for you both." Her genuine enthusiasm was a balm after Mrs. Whittaker's coldness, and Olivia impulsively hugged the younger woman. "Thank you, Elena. Will you come to the wedding? Next Sunday after services?" "I would not miss it," Elena assured her. "And I will make sure Papa wears his good suit." By the time they headed back to the ranch, word of their engagement had spread through the small town like wildfire. Some, like Elena, offered sincere congratulations. Others watched with curious or judgmental eyes. But for the first time, Olivia found she didn't care what anyone thought. She was choosing her own path, her own happiness. The week leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of preparations. Olivia took out her wedding dress from her marriage to Thomas, a simple but elegant gown of ivory silk, and after a moment's consideration, decided to wear it again. It felt right somehow, a connection between her past and her future. Nathan, meanwhile, rode to a neighboring ranch to purchase a yearling calf as a wedding gift for Olivia, the start of what he hoped would be their own breeding stock, separate from the existing herd. "We'll build something together," he told her when he presented the animal. "Something that's ours, not just what you and Thomas created." His understanding of her need to honor the past while embracing the future only confirmed for Olivia that she was making the right choice. The wedding day dawned clear and mild, a perfect early spring Sunday. They drove into town together, an unusual quiet between them born not of awkwardness but of the significance of the moment. "Nervous?" Nathan asked as the church came into view, its white steeple bright against the blue sky. Olivia considered the question. "No," she said, realizing it was true. "It feels right. Like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be." The church was surprisingly full when they entered after the regular Sunday service. It seemed half the town had stayed to witness the widow Ramirez remarry. Olivia held her head high as she walked down the short aisle to where Nathan and Reverend Phillips waited. The ceremony was simple and brief. They exchanged traditional vows, promising to love and honor each other for all their days. When Nathan slipped a ring onto her finger, a delicate band of gold he'd purchased in town, Olivia felt a sense of completion, as if a circle broken by Thomas's death had somehow been made whole again in a new form. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Phillips declared. "You may kiss your bride." Nathan's kiss was gentle but firm, a promise sealed before witnesses. When they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Vance, Olivia was surprised to see genuine smiles on many faces. Even Mrs. Whittaker, sitting stiffly in the back pew, gave a grudging nod of acknowledgement. Santiago was the first to congratulate them, embracing Olivia and shaking Nathan's hand vigorously. "I knew from the beginning," he said in his heavily accented English. "This man, he looks at you the way a man should look at a woman, with respect and love." There was a small reception at the town hall, organized by Alina and some of the other younger women in town. Simple refreshments were served, and a few of the local men who played instruments provided music for dancing. As Nathan led Olivia in a waltz, she was struck by how natural it felt to be in his arms, moving together as if they'd danced 1,000 times before. "Happy, Mrs. Vance," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "Very," she replied, smiling up at him. "Though I think I'll keep Ramirez for the ranch business. It's known by that name." "Whatever you prefer," Nathan agreed easily. "I married you, not your name." The sun was setting as they finally left town, heading back to the ranch, their home now, in a new way. The sky was painted in brilliant oranges and pinks, a spectacular backdrop to the mountains in the distance. "I have a confession to make," Nathan said as they neared the ranch. Olivia glanced at him, curious. "Oh, that first day when I met you at the cemetery. It wasn't a coincidence. I'd heard about you in town, about the widow trying to run a ranch alone. I came looking for you specifically." "Why?" Olivia asked, surprised but not upset. Nathan's eyes remained on the road, but a small smile played at his lips. "I'd been drifting for years, taking jobs here and there, never staying anywhere long. But I was getting tired of the life. Wanted something more permanent," he shrugged. "When I heard about you, something just called to me. Told me I needed to meet this woman. So you came looking for work." "I came looking for you," he corrected gently. "The work was just an excuse." Olivia digested this revelation. "You took quite a chance. I could have sent you away." "You nearly did," Nathan chuckled, "but I'm a patient man. And there was something in your eyes, even that first day, a strength, a fire that drew me in. I knew then I wanted to know you better if you'd allow it." As they pulled up to the ranch house, their home, Olivia felt a rush of gratitude for whatever fate or coincidence had brought Nathan Vance into her life. "I'm glad you're a persistent man," she said as he helped her down from the wagon. Before she could take a step toward the house, Nathan swept her into his arms. "And I'm glad you're a woman who knows her own mind," he replied, carrying her toward the door. "Even if it takes her a while to admit it." Olivia laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Is this really necessary?" "Absolutely," Nathan said with mock seriousness. "It's tradition, and I'm a traditional man." He carried her across the threshold and set her gently on her feet in the front room, but kept his arms around her. "Welcome home, Mrs. Vance," he murmured before lowering his lips to hers. Spring gave way to summer, and the ranch flourished under their combined care. Nathan's knowledge of cattle breeding proved invaluable, and the small herd began to grow both in numbers and quality. Olivia, freed from the constant worry of managing alone, found new energy for projects she'd been putting off: expanding the garden, improving the chicken coop, even adding a new room to the house. By late summer, there was another development to celebrate. Olivia was expecting a child. "Are you sure?" Nathan asked when she told him, his face a mixture of joy and concern. "As sure as I can be," Olivia nodded. "The baby should arrive in early spring." Nathan gathered her into his arms, his joy now unrestrained. "A baby," he marveled. "Our baby." The months that followed were filled with preparations and planning. Nathan worked tirelessly to ensure the ranch would be secure and profitable enough to support their growing family. Olivia, despite the physical challenges of pregnancy, matched his energy, determined that their child would be born into a home filled with love and stability. In town, attitudes toward their marriage had softened considerably. Even Mrs. Whittaker had been known to ask after Olivia's health with something approaching genuine concern. "Amazing what time can do," Nathan observed after one trip to town. "6 months ago they were scandalized. Now they're knitting baby booties." "People like a happy ending," Olivia replied, placing his hand on her rounded belly so he could feel the baby's movements. "And we are happy, aren't we?" "Happier than I ever thought possible," Nathan assured her, his eyes soft with love. Winter came again, but this time Olivia faced it without fear. The ranch was well prepared, the cattle healthy, the larder full, and most importantly, she was no longer alone. On a snowy evening in early March 1881, Olivia went into labor. Nathan rode through a brewing storm to fetch the midwife from town, returning with both the midwife and Dr. Anderson, who happened to be visiting Silver Creek. After 12 hours of labor, Olivia gave birth to a healthy boy with a shock of dark hair and his father's blue eyes. "He's perfect," Nathan whispered, cradling his son with tears in his eyes. "What shall we call him?" Olivia, exhausted but radiant, reached out to touch the baby's tiny hand. "I was thinking Thomas Nathan Vance, to honor the past and celebrate the present." Nathan's eyes met hers, filled with understanding and love. "It's a good name," he agreed. "A strong name." As spring bloomed across the Montana landscape, the Vance family settled into their new routine. Little Thomas, already called Tommy by everyone, thrived, growing stronger each day. The ranch prospered, with the year's calf crop exceeding even Nathan's optimistic predictions. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Tommy sleeping peacefully in his cradle beside them, Nathan took Olivia's hand. "Do you remember what Mrs. Whittaker said to you that day in town, just before our wedding?" Olivia smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "She said many things, most of them disapproving." "She said people claimed you couldn't love again after Thomas died," Nathan reminded her. "And do you remember what I said to you the first time I told you I loved you? You said if I couldn't love again, you would love enough for both of us," Olivia recalled softly. "And I meant it," Nathan said, squeezing her hand. "I would have been content just to love you, to care for you, even if you never returned those feelings." Olivia turned to face him, reaching up to touch his cheek. "But that's not how love works, is it? True love doesn't demand reciprocation, but somehow it creates it. It grows, spreads, multiplies. Like ripples in a pond," Nathan nodded. "Exactly." Olivia smiled, glancing at their sleeping son. "And now there's even more love, expanding in ways I never imagined possible." Nathan leaned down to kiss her gently. "I'm the luckiest man alive." "And I'm the luckiest woman," Olivia replied. "To have loved not just once, but twice in this lifetime." As the last rays of the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, they sat together in the peaceful evening, a family built from loss and hope, from endings and beginnings, from the simple, profound truth that love, once given room to grow, knows no boundaries. And in the years that followed, as the Vance family expanded to include 2 more children, a daughter named for Nathan's mother, and another son who arrived as a surprise, when Tommy was 7, Olivia often thought back to that moment in the cemetery, when she had first met Nathan. How close she had come to sending him away, to closing herself off from the possibility of loving again. "They said I couldn't love again," she would sometimes tell her children when they asked about how she and their father had met. "And your father said he would love enough for both of us. But he didn't have to, because love isn't something that gets used up. It grows and multiplies and finds new ways to express itself." It was a lesson Olivia Ramirez Vance carried with her through all the seasons of her life, through joys and sorrows, through the building of a ranch that eventually became one of the most successful in the territory, through watching her children grow and have families of their own. Love, she had learned, was not a finite resource to be hoarded or mourned when lost, but an endless wellspring that could nourish many lifetimes of happiness, if only one had the courage to open one's heart.